And we went toe to toe. I think it was a quite even match.
It was quite the show at Roland Garros. The most epic of matches, 22-time Grand Slam champion Novak Djokovic defeated 20-year-old world number 1 on the ATP rankings Carlos Alcaraz at the semifinals of the 2023 French Open. Alcaraz lost to Djokovic in straight sets in a match that was quite exhilarating to say the least. Here's a rundown of the spectacular game, but before we get into the match details, let's take a quick look at who these two phenomenal players are, shall we? Novak Djokovic, 36 years old and a Serbian, was ranked world number 3 on the Association of Tennis Professionals ranking before the match in question. He is the winner of 10 Australian Open titles, a record 38 Masters titles, and is the only player to have completed the career Golden Masters in singles by winning all 9 Master tournaments on the ATP Tour. And he did that twice. The 2023 French Open was to be his 34th major championship match, and he was the second oldest finalist in the history of the tournament since 1925. Enter Carlos Alcaraz, 20 years old and a sensational Spanish professional tennis player. Sitting as world number 1 prior to the tournament's finals, he was the youngest man to have reached the tournament semi-final since Novak Djokovic in 2007. From the beginning of the 2023 season, the duo have traded the number 1 position 4 times, with Djokovic dropping to number 3 earlier this year after being replaced by Daniil Medvedev due to the All England Club Championships being stripped of its match points. You might be wondering what the fuss is around these players. Well, it's because, to put it plainly, the similarities between them are overwhelming. At the age of 20, which is the age Carlos Alcaraz is now, Novak made his statement in the tennis world, upsetting the 2 biggest tennis players of all time, Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal, to win his first major title at the 2008 Australian Open. His entrance into the tennis world caused such a fuss that within the space of years, the duo, who were once regarded as the greatest tennis players, grew to become the Big Three. Djokovic was now in the picture, and he had come to stay. His dominance extended up to the 2016 tennis season, where he became the first man since Rod Laver in 1969 to hold the 4 major tennis titles simultaneously. His first career Grand Slam with a record ranking points of 16,950. He was a beast on the field and set out to win just about every match he played, or at least go down trying. At age 36, and despite various injury-ridden seasons, he remains one of the toughest players to face on the tennis court. Alcaraz's talent and tennis prowess reminds us so much of younger Djokovic, perhaps an even better version. He has won 10 tennis singles titles on the ATP Tour, including the 2022 US Open. At just a little over 19 years, he became the youngest man to top the ATP singles rankings following his win at the US Open. In 2021, he defeated world number 3 in singles Stefanos Tsitsipas to reach the 4th round of the tournament, becoming the youngest man in the 4th round of a Grand Slam since 1992. And in 2022, he defeated Casper Ruud to win his first ATP 1000 Masters title, becoming the youngest champion in the history of the tournament. Are you sensing a pattern between these two yet? Alcaraz's achievements since he made his debut on the tour, and even as a young player, speaks of greatness in its bloom, which is exactly why the 2023 French Open semi-finals was such a sizzling match to watch. Now that we have established who our players are, let's get on with the match details.
The first set and the second set was really intense.
The first set began with Djokovic's statement forehand serves firing down the line 3 times, with Alcaraz at loss on how to deal with this avalanche. That is, until he answered with a top spinner, taking the game to 15-40. A fine shot signaling, "I am now ready to battle." The next point went to Alcaraz as Djokovic, after a series of successful forehands, hit wide, and Alcaraz seized the opportunity to secure a shot and close the point. The set continued with the Serb at the absolute top of his game, seeking to run Alcaraz down with each forehand and statement ground strokes. After closing the net 13 times and fending off 3 breakpoints, the set ended in 6-3. Having secured a rhythm in the first set, Djokovic's stunning form regardless, the Spanish tennis player came ready in the second set. From the first serve, he began to showcase his ability to play full on across the court with great speed and agility. At 1-1, the Spaniard displayed one of the most insane shots ever. As he ran toward the net to return Djokovic's drop shot, the Serbian seized the opportunity to send a winner to the opposite corner, Only this time, Alcaraz wasn't about to let go easily. He turned back, slid, reached for the ball on his right side and sent it across his left, closing the point at 2-1. Even Djokovic thought it was quite an amazing save. The set progressed with the Spaniard still giving his opponent no room to breathe. Djokovic began to look weary at some point, and midway through the set, he requested for his trainer to come have a look at his forehand. Perhaps also seizing the opportunity to take a breather from the momentum Alcaraz seemed to have gathered in the ongoing set. Drop shots, cunning forehands, and a serve and a volley landed a service winner for Djokovic, bringing the point to a close 5-5. It was beginning to look quite tough to beat a 22-time Grand Slam champion at his finest, but try he did. And a fine trial it was as Alcaraz leveled the match, taking the second set at 7-5. At that point in the game, the crowd was tense. Whoever won the next set was likely to determine the trajectory of the remaining games to be played. Any guesses? The third set began with Alcaraz closing out the point while returning a lob to Djokovic's backhand slice. Trouble seemed to be looming though. After a majestic show of forehands and backhands in the next point, Alcaraz suddenly seemed unable to move, crouching in pain due to leg cramps. Following a 3-minute break, he returned to finish the set regardless, but his injury seemed to hamper his movement from then on, and he was barely able to follow up with Djokovic's shots, giving less than great returns when he did. Djokovic, on the other hand, seemed a bit shaken by the change in pace, and while he was of course on a journey to win, this part of the game didn't seem as enjoyable as the other sets had been. This set ended in 6-1 to the Serb. The next set began with an ace from Djokovic, and although Alcaraz had begun to look better, the match was still not back to its initial momentum as the Spaniard still struggled to return some of the shots, moving only as far as his cramps would allow. As the match progressed, however, he began to fare better. A dreamy lob here and a fancy forehand there, and Alcaraz secures a point for himself. Slowly accepting his fate with a smile, the game progressed to a somewhat foreseeable, but what some might call an anticlimactic end. A 6-1 to Djokovic, and he advanced to the finals on his way to securing his 23rd Grand Slam title and his 7th at the French Open. He had played at his absolute best, bringing his A-game to the court. Little wonder his opponent had suffered a case of nerves and cramps not having played the Serb in this magnitude before. But hey, was this the first time Djokovic and Alcaraz would have such a face-off? Definitely not. In fact, just last year at the Madrid Open, the duo had met for the first time at the semifinals, and though some might say it was not of the epic proportions they had once played at this year's French Open semifinals, it was no doubt a greatly satisfying match to watch. Alcaraz won the match and advanced to the finals. This was right after he had defeated tennis legend Rafael Nadal in the quarterfinals, eventually emerging the champion of the Mutua Madrid Open. As the players shook hands at the net, it seemed as if, though joyful at his win, having worked hard for it, Djokovic still felt sorry at the way the latter parts of the match played out. He encouraged the younger player, stating that there would be more matches to be won in good time. He also commiserated with his injuries and congratulated him on the determination to fight till the end instead of just bowing out. Adding in his on-court interview, he acknowledged that they were an evenly matched pair, and while he was aware of the struggles of his opponent on the other side of the net, he had tried to focus and stay present in the match because he was already starting to feel less fresh right from the second set. Of course, there would be more head-to-head games to be played between the two, and hopefully this time both players would be in their top form. Such a match would definitely make tennis history.